Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast. Today we will continue our series on Whither Are We Traveling with Chapter 4, Part 2 of our discussion of Chapter 4, A Pearl of Great Price.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have all four of our hosts. We have Worshipful Brother Jarrod Dunham from Penticton, British Columbia, Worshipful Brother Stephen Chung from Kelowna, British Columbia, Worshipful Brother David Colbeth, Brother David Colbeth from, I know your lodge is in Auburn, but you don't live in Auburn, but we'll say Auburn, Washington. So. And I'm Matt Appel, and my lodge is in Mount Lake Terrace, Washington. So we left off our discussion last time talking about the fact that it is commonly believed that if one pays more for something, that one values it more highly. And I Googled, because I had to bust out my master's in business here and try and find something from back when I was at school. And I remember there was a whole series of things on the like, for instance, if you give someone a placebo in a drug trial, that if they pay more for the placebo, they're more than twice as likely to think that it had a positive effect, or that it's more than twice as likely to have a positive effect on the person as if they did not pay for the placebo.
Really?
So there is, psychologically, there is absolutely something to this. As much as I like to be a doubter and cast doubts on everything Jarrod says, I wish there is definitely something to it. It happens in my family, right? We had tickets to a concert that were free, and it turned out that some tiny hiccup in our schedules made it like less than perfectly convenient to go, so we didn't bother going. But on the other hand, if we'd paid $15, $20, $50 for these tickets, I bet you we would have been there. There's definitely a power to paying for something.
Part of that is the sunk cost fallacy.
It is. I agree. It's a total fallacy.
Yeah.
But it's not true. Or not.
No, but it's the sunk cost fallacy that this is why people keep pouring money into bad ideas and bad businesses, because I've already spent that money. Might as well keep putting, but that's neither here nor there. And I'm rambling on again.
No, I totally agree that the sunk cost fallacy is very much a real thing, but that doesn't mean it's not a psychological effect that on people. I spent $100 to join this, or $50, $1,000, or whatever to join this organization. Damn it, I'm going to get my money's worth.
Right. Which is why it's always incumbent on us when we do initiate someone to do a damn good job.
Which is where we said we were going to take this episode before I dragged us horribly off topic. So, what is a damn good job? Why? What would we do that would provide this person value for their money for joining this organization?
Well, we've all been through degrees where we know that the lodge that is performing the degree isn't ready to do it. They stumble through it. They forget lines. Even worse are the dozen or so past masters shouting prompts from the sidelines. That, and especially, when a candidate is going through something like that, that's not us putting our best foot forward, and they're not. I don't know how anyone could feel that they're getting any kind of value for their time and money that they're putting into it.
And of course, that extends beyond just the degree, right? So let's say they even do a pretty good degree, mediocre. I mean, maybe a little better than mediocre. Maybe not perfect, but a little better than mediocre. But then when they come back and the meetings are just meetings, there's no education. There's no, and I was just thinking this week, we're having some great, our new master had already started with a great piece of education, some great discussion. But then I was listening to our show from 2 weeks ago on the way back, and I think, what are we giving people? Should we be giving them some moral lessons, more moral lessons? Should we be giving them more personal development discussions? Or is it just I don't want to sound like this is flippant at all. Our master had a great discussion about the perfect lodge versus the not so perfect lodge. One that's, they do the ritual exactly perfect. Everything's perfect. Nobody misses a beat. They do everything perfectly. And then there's the lodge that doesn't do everything quite so perfectly. Maybe they need a prompt once in a while. They don't need to prompt every word. It's not horrible, but they do it with meaning. And so I would, there's a, which lodge do you think, which Mason do you think had the better experience, was this question to the group. And we had a great discussion back and forth. And there was a lot of middle of the road. Well, I think they both had a pretty good experience. It was kind of what a lot of people were saying. And so how do you decide which one had the better experience? And then is it just about ritual? Is it just about Masonic education? No, I think it's really more, we should be teaching more beyond, right? The personal and personal development and potential leadership or other things that we sometimes talk about.
But we're not a personal development education outfit, right? If we're going to give education, it should be.
I don't know about that. Where's the mute button? Where's the mute button?
I'm going to get under my desk before Jarrod explodes now.
All right, we're about to have a Golden Globes moment. Someone get their finger on the button.
I'm referring to more like things like Toastmasters and things like that. Why we're not
Toastmasters is about learning a skill.
Yes.
Freemasonry is about personal development, making you a better person.
Yeah, and Toastmasters has a very specific skill too.
Yeah.
Although I would think we have elements of Toastmasters.
Oh, totally.
Give speeches and stuff. And so.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We're part Toastmasters, part business development. Part I don't know, family counselor. I mean,
there's a great article out there somewhere. I should provide a link that somebody wrote that said, if you want to, get back to your community, join the Lions Club. If you want to have a business relationship with people, join the Rotary. If you want to learn how to do public speaking, join Toastmasters. If you want to, drink and be merry, go join the Elks Club. And Masonry is basically not any of those things, but
it's all of them.
I would say there's just elements, just a little bit of each of them, but not that focus.
I thought that's where you're headed with that one. I thought it was going to be sort of, and if you want to do all of this, join Freemasonry.
So what is that perceived value that you think a guy should be getting when he's attending lodge?
Well, as I said, the first part is their 3 degrees should be good.
Yeah. And like he talks about in the article, it doesn't have to be today. Oh, we elected him. Let's do the degree tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, and once again, that cheapens the value, because if it's worth wait, if it takes you a long time to do something, that increases the value in it.
Right. Like we just had the longest running entered apprentice for 3 years.
That's nothing. We've got to,
beat. Granted, that's because COVID was in there and whatnot, But I do know that we just delayed having our Master Mason degree for that fellow because we weren't ready to do the job properly and to give a good quality presentation of that degree. So we said to the candidate, the brother going through that degree, we're going to delay this. We're not ready, and we don't want to give you anything less than our best effort, right? And I made them meet 13 practices, right? Pretty much before we said, okay, we're ready. And of course, even then there was last minute changes that happened in the cast, which made it, a last minute substitution, which made it not our best effort again, right? But at least we were waiting till we were ready. Accidents happen and things like that. But I mean, other than that, we were ready, but we put it off because we thought that the candidate deserved our best.
We talked in our officer meeting in January, which I was so excited that we had an officer meeting, and we talked in our officer meeting about the plans, what our master's plans were kind of for this year and developing things. And then he brought it to the meeting that we had a week ago, that one of the things we're going to do is we're going to have a degree every quarter, no matter what. Of course, if we have degrees in between and other times, we'll have those as well, but no less than 1 degree every quarter. And if we don't have a candidate particularly, we will exemplify a degree at that time. That'll do several things. It'll allow us to prepare, and it'll allow new Masons or even old Masons like me to write other parts. You know, I may be okay at a particular part, and people say, "Well, David, you could do a good job with that. I don't want you to, I don't want to take that away from David." Well, no, I want you to take it away from me because I want to go learn another part. And so that's the intent, is to say, hey, on the 4th Monday in March, we're going to have a first degree, and we're going to have basically a whole new cast. You're going to do this piece, and you're going to do this piece, and you're going to do this piece. And now they have 3 months to plan for it. And if we have a candidate, great. If we don't, we'll exemplify it and see how it goes.
Well, there's different thoughts running through my head on that one. If you're going to move guys around, are you also going to have enough practices so that these guys are showing themselves proficient before doing this degree for the guy going through?
The theory is that we hold our 4th Mondays for either a practice or for a degree. But the problem is that we end up not ever really doing the practices unless we have a degree to do. And so the intent was to say, yes, we are going to have a degree, exemplified or not, on this day. So hopefully it would spur us expectations again, set the expectation that, hey, we need to have a practice. So we're coming into the 3rd Monday here tomorrow. It will be our proficiency in lodge management. We've been talking with the deputy and other folks about reviving our district proficiency in lodge management program. And then the next Monday, the 4th Monday, will be our degree practice. So we'll see how it holds if everybody is actually going to do that and get together. We're planning a 2nd degree, a joint 2nd degree. Every year we have a joint 2nd degree with our daughter lodge, one lodge that we sponsored. And so it's been kind of fun. Of course, with COVID, we didn't do that. And so now this will be the first time. Actually, we did do one last year. So we're planning on doing a 2nd degree instead of a 1st degree. But at least now we know that's going to come in March.
We all seem to agree that a quality degree experience is important. I would argue that just as important, from which somebody said earlier. So all I'm doing is copying what someone else said, that the first meeting after they get their Master Mason degree is just as important as the meeting where they get their Master Mason degree. That if so, I mean, it used to be, and I guess not too long before I joined in Washington, that if you weren't a Master Mason, you didn't go into the lodge for the business meetings. It was all, you just sat outside and studied or talked with other people or whatever. That the EAs and FCs weren't allowed into regular business meetings. And but that changed, I guess, early 2000s, late 90s. And so I guess it was especially true then. But if you told this person they're now a Master Mason, that they are entitled to the secrets of Masonry, and then their first meeting is all, what color paint should we use, and what do you mean we don't have enough green beans for dinner, and whatever, recrimination between brothers or whatever it is, then that sets a tone for that brother who's essentially going to ruin their previous experience.
Yeah, exactly. And so what should we be following on with? There's some lodges that are trying to provide, again, education, Masonic education. So we might crack open a short talk bulletin or something like that, and they'll read it, or they'll maybe have a canned thing they talk about, or maybe they play the Working Tools podcast, and they
God help them.
For those that aren't watching, you saw 4 guys start laughing hysterically when I said that in the video. But so is it, again, does it have to be Masonic? Could it be more geared? Maybe it should be more geared towards personal development.
And does it have to be at the meeting? Because one of the things our mentorship committee does is they do the coaching with the candidates, right? As they do their prove ups and so on. And they analyze the prove ups. They analyze the memory work. They help them understand it. They look into the different meanings of things, and it's as more as that's the more educational part, which seems to come from our mentorship committee rather than in the business meeting.
So here's a more specific example, and I'm going to give him a little shout out. I'm pretty sure he listens to the podcast. Brian Pack, a relatively brand new master mason in our lodge. So hey, Brian, you're internationally known now, and he's one of the guys that's asking questions, right? He's digging in, reading books and different things. And so one of the things he said was, "Hey, what's a good book on leadership that teaches basically the crossover between Freemasonry and the tools and ideas in Freemasonry and non-Freemasonry leadership concepts?" And he didn't, luckily he actually asked it in a text and I didn't have to have a blank stare on my face. But one of our other past masters that he had texted as part of that gave him a quick example. And of course, I immediately went and bought that book.
Which was?
The Working Tools of Lodge Leader. I'd have to look at, I think it's the Working Tools of Lodge Leadership. I'll have to look. So it's ironically similar to our name, and but it was really great. But then I found another book, and now I'm on the show on spot, and I can't think of his name. Brian, I think it's Brian Nelson. I'm gonna mess it up. Probably Charworth's brother. He out of Utah. He had written another book that was regarded by Scottish Rite in one of their blog posts, and so I went to try to find it. Couldn't find it. Magic of Masonry. I figured out how to contact his secretary. He forwarded my message to the brother, and he called me and we chatted, and he said, "Yeah, the publisher went out of business. If he can find a copy, he will." I said, "I'd be happy to pay for it." And he said, "I'll send you a PDF." So I have the PDF, awesome, of this Lodge Leadership, the 5 traits of Lodge Leadership, I believe. So I'm looking forward to reading that one as well. But anyway, that's what I'm looking for in this section right now, is what is the crossover? Maybe we talk about, and we do allude to this in our lectures and some of our ritual, some of our concepts bleed over into our profane life, if you will. But do we do enough of that? Or is it just we expect or assume that the guy is going to learn that by osmosis because we say it in the lecture, we say it in the ritual?
Well, I think from my point of view, if we're discussing the first meeting after the 3rd degree, is that what's really crucial is that the lodge, the master knows how to run their meeting smoothly. And I know that this was alluded to, and I think when we discussed chapter 2 of this, was that the master of the lodge should know how to lead his lodge. He shouldn't have to he should. My biggest pet peeve that always frustrates me is when people are sitting in the East and they have absolutely no concept of our rules, of our Constitution and regulations. That constantly, that I have sat it through Board of General Purposes where a master said, "Oh, I want to do this," and you'll have 2 or 3 brothers put their hand up, but you can't, because the Constitution and regulations say you can't do it that way. So I think part of what needs, like part of the good lodge experience is a master that is partially officers knowing how to do their job properly, so that the discussions are managed in a timely manner, so that the order of business is progressed through orderly. I'm not sure if I'm making myself clear, but because the business of the lodge needs to be done, but it doesn't need to drag on forever and be totally, leading lemmings over the cliff. And I think that's part of what turns people off of business meetings. Is it's not so much the business as it is that it's just so poorly managed that it just drags on and on and on. And I think a new member would learn, as you say, some of it that is actually learned through osmosis by sitting in these well-run meetings and at some point trying to emulate the masters that have run them.
And so is there, again, and we talked about before as well, is there a need for more leadership training on how to be a leader in running a meeting and how to develop things. And if the guy isn't necessarily a real speaker, presenter, teacher, whatever, should we expect that he's the one that tries to teach and deliver, or should we expect that he finds somebody that is more the teacher that can bring up those conversations, have those discussions?
Are you talking about the lodge education officer?
No, well, it could be. Maybe it's not. I mean, maybe it's just a particular brother that is really good at kind of weaving in the reasons behind things, symbolism, and or again, the connection, I guess, between Freemasonry and our profane world. And what is this thing we call Masonry? Why are we having these meetings? Why don't we just go be good people?
Right. Have we gotten off topic?
Oh yeah. That's the dumbest question I've heard on this show so far. When are we not off topic? Are we ever on topic?
Okay. So part of, to answer Dave's thing, is that's at least up here. That is the lodge education officer's job, is to guide the discussions and to find, and if they don't know the answer, to find the person who does have the answer and bring them in.
Yeah.
So, and I think, and it's also their job to, have the right balance between Masonic history, Masonic symbolism, lodge leadership, things like that.
See, another thing I'm going to steal. We don't have that job,
right?
Necessarily. I think it'd be great to have that role. So the other, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, again, I'm going to bust out my business school knowledge here. One of the things that we talked about a lot back in my business school days 20 years ago was managing the expectations of the people too. When the guy comes in, if he is expecting for the first meeting that he as a master mason to be, you open the tabernacle and light pours out and kind of, they open the Ark of the Covenant and half the people's faces melt off, and he gets the debate over paint color and light bulb wattage, then he's going to be extremely disappointed. Whereas if we can teach him ahead of time that, hey, business meetings are business meetings and they've got to be done, and somehow he has to decide on the paint color, there it is. But, after the meeting, we have a discussion about something, or we also, discuss this book, or you're welcome to come to breakfast with the guys, or whatever it is. And maybe that's where the real masonry happens. Maybe the meetings are, while important, not always the best venue for that teaching, which I think I just brought up two things: the best venue for the teaching and the managing expectations thing. But letting him know what to expect, I think, is half the battle too.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say setting expectations is absolutely one of the lacking working tools of masonry.
And frankly,
maybe we need to have a new tool, Matt.
The expectation setter. But it's one of those double-edged things, right? You don't want to set his expectations low. You don't want to say, now all the meetings suck from here on out. But you also don't want him to expect the opening of the tabernacle, right? There's a double-edged sword there somewhere.
So speaking of expectations, speaking of expectations, one of the last sections in here, he talks about the privilege of courtesy work. And as I started to read, I thought, oh, this is going to be not what I expect. And then I assumed what the paragraph was going to be about. And when I read it, I thought, oh, this is completely different than what I thought it was going to be about. In that the idea of his concept there is that if a lodge asks you to come and be part of their degree or part of their any kind of ritual, it was an honor because they were saying to you, oh my gosh, even though we can do this, we know you do it so much better. We'd really like you to come and do this for us. At least that's the way I read it. Versus now, it's more like, oh, we don't have anybody to do that part. Hey, Joe, can you come do this for us? Courtesy work has become, in my opinion, if this is what I'm reading and understanding out of this paragraph, courtesy work has become a thing out of necessity rather than a thing out of privilege and kind of honor. hey, Jarrod, you do the third degree lecture way better than anybody I've ever heard. Could you please come and do it for us? Even though we have a third degree lecturer, could you please come and do it for us?
I read it completely different. I read it where, you know, a guy petitions a lodge, but he gets his degree in another lodge because the lodge is, you know, and because he says, oops, where did it go? He says here is that I've totally lost my
He
line
does
here,
allude to
where-
that a little later, but I guess I thought.
but
yes, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, the incident in which a brother received his 50-year button without ever having attended a meeting of his own lodge.
That is crazy.
You know, and it's interesting because it references Canada, where, and once again, I went to our regulations and constitutions, which states that you can receive a degree in any lodge.
And
we do that. There are lodges. There are, like we do it all with my lodge. We do that where we'll do a degree with, you know, if a lodge doesn't have enough members, we'll combine the two lodges together to do a degree.
But in Canada, they are to receive their entered apprentice degree at their home lodge. After that, they can be received courtesy degrees from other lodges. But it's
I'll be back in a minute.
You go find it, because I just remember we had this discussion in not Board of General Purpose, Board of General Purpose, because we had the offer to put a candidate through the entered apprentice degree in Kalamalka Lodge in Vernon, but we said no, we can't do that. Right. So then somebody looked that up. No, we can't do that.
I will not read directly from our regulations and constitutions, but whoever said that is wrong. You can receive any degree in any lodge. It literally says any degree in any lodge.
All right.
Matt, do you have our code open? He's looking for it right now. Doesn't it say that?
I am very much looking for it right now. Yes.
My understanding, if I remember correctly, is that first degree has to be done in your home lodge, and then it can be done anywhere, basically.
That's what I'm looking for. I know that's the. I say I know. I'm 98% sure that is the case for the one-day conferral process. I don't know that it's true for the just your generic Mason.
Is it in that one-day conferral section, or is it
Sonicus genericus?
I'm control Fing as we speak. Stop asking me questions.
So while he's looking for that, I was going to say that the next section he talks a little bit about the speed of masonry as well, in that the father and son connection, where the father says, "Oh, hey, can you please get my son in before this happens or whatever? We don't need to go through all that. Just get my son to get through it." And he kind of pulls some strings. And I actually wrote on the side, that's almost misconduct.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how many fathers are getting their sons into lodges anyway? So actually, we have a member whose son is joining the other lodge in town simply because it's Canadian work and it's the easier one to pass.
So I actually wrote down in this section. I wrote my exact quote is, "Wait, me?" So my son is he's almost 17. He's headed towards 17. And so that means in another year he'll be eligible to join. And I have had a mighty internal debate over what kind of conversation I want to have with him about that and how that should go. So I'm willing to take pointers. If anybody has
my dad did slap the petition, the application down on the table with the card and go, "Well, son, you're 21. Here's the paperwork."
Or as the old joke goes, have your mom or grandma or whatever, poke him in the ribs.
Yeah.
You could just leave the application and the document, the seeker, lying around for him to, make sure that he, stumbles across it.
Yeah, I mean, he's a member of DMLA, which he's not enjoyed as much as I would have hoped he would. And so, which I'm not a DMLA guy. I didn't grow up with it, so I don't have it's not like I think it's the be-all end-all organization, but it's the most Masonic organization. Sorry, Steve. it's the most Masonic organization certainly he could have joined as a young man. Do I say, hey son, someday in the future you might want to do this, it's out there. Do I do the Jarrod, and here's your petition, I paid for it already? Because like I said, wait, me?
I think I don't have somebody that was in that position, so it's hard for me to say this, but I think I would say that there's a little bit of expectation, right? Especially if he was a DMLA, he already understands the expectation of bettering himself. And so don't you want to continue to better yourself? Now, again, back to Jarrod's comment and Matt's comment, what experience is he getting in the lodge? If we're going to say all these, you should join Masonry to develop yourself and to have a better personal experience. Well, if he's not going to get that in lodge, then how can we convince him to do that?
But if he does join Freemasonry, if he goes off somewhere else to go to university, he'll have a ready-made group of people to actually have some support from.
That's kind of what I'm. So
because we are a fraternity.
He's talking about going to college in his current two top schools are in Massachusetts and Florida.
Right.
And yeah, I could totally see myself saying, son, you go to whatever, you're standing around in downtown Worcester and look, there's the Masonic Lodge, and you could go in and there are some people who might be willing to help you out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before we wrap up too, I pulled up these books that I had kind of alluded to and did a horrible job of crediting them. So the one was The Working Tools of Leadership, Applying the Teachings of Freemasonry by Michael Kirkab. And the most important, the most generous one was actually Matt Nelson, Lodge Leadership, a 5-Step Guide to Masonic Reform. And wow, what a generous offer, Brother Matt. So thank you for that, sending that to me.
Oh, I thought I found the entered apprentice requirement, and it wasn't it. It was something else.
It's eluding us.
You're a better Googler than I am.
My guess is that if there was ever a question, that trial committee or whoever would allude to the section, even if it happens to be under the 1-day degree section, they would say, well, right here it says you have to get your first degree in your home lodge. I'll bet they would refer to that.
All right. So I guess the other two things I had questions on, we're running out of time. I shouldn't bring this up, but here we are. The past master who offered to pay the son's initiation fee, which we kind of talked about, but the ill-advised church parishioners who offered to pay the fee for their minister, I never even heard of that. That's
I didn't even write any notes about that.
Maybe that was common in the 60s in Indiana, but that boggled my mind.
Yeah, I didn't even bother to write notes.
All right. So, hearing that, any other further comments on the Pearl of Great Price chapter? Hearing
I think we should charge more, but I also believe in delivering value too. So, if you're delivering value, you should be able to charge more.
I feel like this is the chapter we've agreed with the most of the four we've read so far.
Yep, and the next chapter should be an interesting conversation.
Oh, I did find it. Haha! Degrees by courtesy. A lodge having elected a petitioner to receive the degrees may request another lodge to confer one or more of the degrees. No petitioner, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so it doesn't say. It just says the candidate shall become a member of the lodge which elected him. So any lodge can do degrees for any person.
Well, that settles it.
At least in Washington it does. So on that note, on behalf of David and Jarrod and Stephen and myself, we want to thank you all for listening to the Working Tools podcast, and we look forward to hearing your comments or thoughts on some of these topics. I'm sure we are not the be all and end all of Masonic wisdom, and we could use your oh, sorry, Jarrod. Three of the four of us are not the be all and end all of Masonic wisdom, and so we would like to hear what you think about these topics. So please let us know. And so on behalf of the four top hosts here, we thank you for listening, and we look forward to talking to you next time on the Working Tools podcast. Goodbye.